In the highlands of Kenya, archaeologists uncovered a human skull with a perfectly round hole carved into the top, not from violence, not from trauma, but from deliberate surgical precision. What stunned them more? The bone around the hole had healed. That meant the patient had survived a brain surgery that happened over 2,000 years ago, long before scalpels gleamed in sterile Western operating rooms, long before Hippocrates penned his medical texts. African surgeons were opening the skull and saving lives. The practice is called trepanation, the surgical removal of a piece of the skull to treat head injuries, neurological disorders, or spiritual afflictions. While it's often assumed to have been born in Europe or the Middle East, some of the oldest and most advanced examples of trepanation come from sub-Saharan Africa. And the more we uncover, the more it upends everything we thought we knew about the history of medicine. Let's journey back to the kingdom of Buganda, in what is now Uganda, around the 15th century. A place of vibrant kingdoms, powerful oral traditions, and a deep reverence for healers, who were often priests, seers, and surgeons all in one. Here, medicine was never divorced from spirituality. Illness was not just physical, it was emotional, cosmic. So when someone suffered from a head injury, severe migraines, epilepsy, or what we might today call traumatic brain injury, the village healer might do the unthinkable. He would cut open the skull. But this wasn't barbarism, it was skill, passed down through generations. French anthropologist and physician Dr. Félix Dubois, who traveled to Mali in the 19th century, reported something astonishing. He examined skulls from ancient burial sites that showed signs of trepanation, not crude or brutal incisions, but smooth, rounded holes with signs of bone regrowth. The healing patterns told a story. These patients lived. Some even had multiple surgeries over their lifetime. But the most remarkable discovery came from the Kisi tribe in western Kenya. When colonial doctors in the early 20th century observed the practices of Kisi healers, they were shocked to see that brain surgery, the removal of skull fragments, was still being practiced, not in sterile conditions, not with anesthesia as we know it, but with astonishing survival rates. One colonial physician, Dr. J.A.G. Leakey, noted that Kisi surgeons used sharpened knives made from locally smelted iron. Before the operation, the patient was given banana wine to dull the pain. Assistants would restrain the person, and the surgeon would begin to cut, slowly, patiently, always listening to the breath, the twitch, the moan. The bone was lifted, the pressure relieved, and the wound cleaned with herbs, packed with crushed bark, wrapped with leaves. And yet, the patient survived. There is a record of one man injured in a tribal conflict who had a trepanation performed after a blow to the head left him semi-conscious. His wound festered, he convulsed. The healer, an elder named Omwonyi, diagnosed trapped wind in the head, a metaphor for swelling or pressure. The trepanation was done at dawn, and within days, the man had begun to eat, speak, and walk again. Western doctors at the time called it superstition, but their journals, tucked in dusty colonial archives, tell another story, a medicine they didn't understand. Why was this knowledge never globalized? Part of the answer lies in colonization. For centuries, African science, like African culture, was either ignored, demonized, or stolen. European explorers who encountered these surgeries often dismissed them as crude rituals, but in private they wrote of their precision, their effectiveness, and the undeniable survival of their patients. Yet these accounts rarely made it into textbooks. Meanwhile, in Peru, similar trepanation skulls were being found among the Inca and their ancestors, thousands of them. Some of the most advanced, dating from 1000 to 1400 AD, show success rates as high as 80 to 90%. But in East Africa, the same skill, practiced for generations, remained an unspoken marvel. There's something else. In many African communities, knowledge wasn't written down. It was spoken, remembered, sung, a sacred inheritance guarded by those deemed spiritually ready to hold it. That meant when colonizers displaced local healers, burned shrines, outlawed indigenous medicine, much of that knowledge died with the elders or went underground. But some fragments survive, in the form of songs, of rituals, of stories told at dusk beside the fire, and in the silent, unflinching testimony of skulls with healed holes. Perhaps the most chilling twist comes from Tanzania, where archaeologists in the 1960s unearthed skulls near Lake Eyasi, estimated to be at least 12,000 years old. One of them, a young man, bore a clear trepanation wound, a small circle at the top of the cranium, with signs of healing. That means African healers may have been performing brain surgery long before the Great Pyramids were built, before the Epic of Gilgamesh was written, before the wheel had even reached Europe, 12,000 years ago. It leaves us wondering, what else have we lost? What ancient practices, once dismissed as primitive, were actually sophisticated medical traditions? How many patients owe their lives not to modern hospitals, but to healers with no degree, no textbook, just generations of wisdom and steady hands? Today, the term trepanation sounds medieval, but in the 21st century, its modern cousin, craniotomy, is standard neurosurgery. We now use scalpels, anesthesia, CT scans, but the principle is the same. Open the skull, relieve the pressure, save the brain. The only difference? The credit. The story we tell about who invented what and where the genius came from. What if we've been looking at Africa with the wrong lens all along? In the dry museum drawers of Nairobi, in the clay-lined burial sites of Mali, in the highlands of Ethiopia and Uganda, the bones speak. They speak of knowledge, of pain, of healing, of survival, of hands that cut, not to harm, but to help. And now, we're only beginning to listen. But one mystery remains. In some traditions, the surgery wasn't just medical, it was spiritual. Healers claimed to open the door for the ancestors, to let out bad spirits or to receive visions. Could it be that these early neurosurgeons were also psychonauts, exploring the boundary between life and death? We'll never fully know. But perhaps in that strange intersection between healing and spirit, science and ritual, lies a truth more advanced than we're ready to admit. If this story shifted how you see history, if it made you question what we've been told about Africa, medicine and genius, don't let it end here. Hit the like button, subscribe for more unknown stories from African and Asian history, and drop a comment below. What other primitive practices do you think held advanced wisdom we've overlooked? This is History Off the Map, and next time we're digging even deeper.